This is the WP Elevation Podcast, helping WordPress consultants elevate.
G'day, Troy Dean here from WP Elevation, and I'm super thrilled to have with me all the way from Canada, Brad T from Delicious Brains. Hey Brad, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks for joining us on the WP Elevation Podcast. For those of you that don't know, Brad T is the man behind Delicious Brains, makers of the WP Migrate DB Pro plugin, and formerly of the WP App Store, which we're going to talk about in a little while. But before we jump into this, quick competition announcement. Brad has kindly sponsored a personal license of the WP Migrate DB Pro plugin, which is awesome. Stick around for details on how you can enter that competition and hopefully win a copy of that a little bit later on. All right, hey Brad. When you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, if you skip the part where I wanted to be a firefighter like everybody else, I probably wanted to be an engineer. It was probably the first actual real career. Not that firefighting is not a career.
Sure.
I don't want to get...
Yeah, you've just insulted all the firefighters out there.
Firefighters, right? It's dangerous territory. But yeah, I think I wanted to be an engineer, and then I got into computers, and then it was all over. So,
and why is that? Why was it all over when you discovered computers? Is it because you can push a button and make them do stuff, whereas like humans you can't make them do stuff no matter which buttons you push?
I don't know. I think that's what it is, and it's just like it was so much easier working in the virtual world, right? You could make so many mistakes. And without losing a bunch of money, you know what I mean? Like, if you're like a civil engineer, you can't make too many mistakes building a bridge. It's very expensive, those mistakes, So, I think, and that's why I keep coming back to software when I'm like, oh, I got this awesome product idea. It'd be so cool to build that, and then I'm like, oh yeah, but how much would it cost to develop a prototype? How many times would you have to fail before you had something that's sellable? Yeah. So that's why software is so great, because you can fail, and there's just erasing code, right? It's no big deal.
Yeah, it's just Command Z, isn't it? It's just undo, undo, undo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or like archive, just chuck that project in a folder somewhere. And start over.
So when did you discover the web?
I think we got the web in 1997. Got one of those AOL CDs in the mail. Plugged that in, and then $900 in long distance later. It was that was lesson learned. Because when you used to do dial-up back then, you were calling like a long distance number, right?
Yeah.
So we figured out that wasn't the way to go, and we found like a local ISP to call to.
Wow. And there were weren't there like big stickers on the CD warning, long distance rate supplies? That was in the fine print, right?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I don't know what AOL was doing, man. They were just sending CDs that's just shipping. They're just shipping them like by the truckload.
Yeah. And what about WordPress? Do you remember the first time you see do you remember the first time you saw the WordPress dashboard?
Yeah, I think so. I remember trying blogging software out, trying different ones. I tried Movable Type and didn't care for it too much. And then I tried WordPress, and it kind of stuck. I think that was in 2004, I think was when I first started blogging. And that's when I got a hold of WordPress. So. And
at what point did you think this might be a platform that I could build some products for?
That didn't come until really recently, actually. Probably 2009 or 2008, maybe, I guess. I was really involved with freelancing and just client work. And I wasn't really thinking of products so much then.
Yeah.
And then I had that idea for the WP App Store, and then now I've got the product bug, and I can't go back.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I mean, I'm jumping all over the place here. I'm kind of off script a little bit, but what is it about doing product work that appeals to you more so than doing client work?
Yeah, I think well, originally what appealed to me is that I love the idea of iterating on a product and refining it and making it better and better and better. And that's really what we've been doing with Migrate DB Pro. And I love that process. Whereas client work is, my experience with client work has always been they just want a website and they throw it up and then they don't do a whole lot with it, for a few years, and then they redo it from scratch, usually, right? It's usually kind of the process with client work. So it's kind of like build and tear down kind of philosophy. Yeah. Yeah. But the good thing about client work is that there's an end to the project. Right. It's kind of nice to have like this finished thing that you've completed and it's done, and it's, you get the sense of completion. Whereas with product work, it's never done. You're always thinking of new things to do with it. There's always work to be done. It's kind of like owning a house, Yeah, right. There's always something to do with it.
Yeah, there's always a list of chores that need to be done.
Exactly. Yeah. It just never ends.
So, thinking about today, what do you when you meet someone for the first time? What do you do? And they ask you, what do you do? How do you describe what you do? What's your elevator pitch?
I usually just tell people I sell software online, and I guess it depends on the context, who I'm talking to. Yeah. And then I'll go from there deeper if they know what I'm talking about at that point.
Right.
If I'm talking to someone who develops for WordPress, I'm going to say, I Migrate DB Pro. It's kind of like Git for WordPress databases. Kind of like you can push your database from one install to the other, and you can pull it down from one install to the other. So it's like Git in that way.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. I like it. What do you spend most of your time actually doing day to day?
Yeah, I probably do a lot of design work more so now. And I don't mean too much aesthetic design, but just getting things right. Getting the user experience right so that it feels right for the developers that are using the product. I do a lot of reviewing commits because I have a coworker who I employ, and he's just coding away like crazy, right? And so I review his commits and give him feedback on that stuff. And then I do a lot of marketing strategy as well. But yeah, I'd say mostly reviewing commits, designing, and just a little bit of coding. Yeah.
And when you were doing client work, were you mainly coding or doing UI design, or a bit of both?
Mostly coding. I kind of sold myself as a front-end developer and a WordPress specialist. So I don't know. It's not. It's kind of a little bit of two things there, but the agency I worked at didn't really have a front-end person, so I just got really good at doing that stuff. So converting PSDs into HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Yep. And so I kind of and because I have a little bit of a design background, I could do that with very good precision. So I felt like I was somewhat uniquely, that I had the skills to do that. So, and then the WordPress stuff came in because we were just looking for a CMS to throw client websites on at the agency I was working at, and I had a WordPress blog, so I said, let's try WordPress, and it started working out really great. So went from there. It's
a pretty common thread, pretty common story. Everyone I talked to started using WordPress for their own blog because it had a really low kind of learning curve and low, least path of resistance, and then they realized they could do more than blog, and then they started using it for client work, and now they're making products and selling products on WordPress. And it's a pretty
it's a very similar story.
Yeah.
I've heard. I mean, you were at Pressnomics as well. And
yeah.
I mean, that's the story that goes around, right?
Yeah. It was Pressnomics was awesome this year, wasn't it? Were you there last year as well?
Yes, I
Right.
was. And I thought this year was just as good as last year. It was, phenomenal again.
Yeah.
Met a bunch of new people this time around. I think they did a little poll of the audience. I think it was 2/3 were new people, which I was shocked by. I thought it would be like half or so, but
Yeah.
yeah. It's
Yeah,
a great conference.
It's a great conference. It's really good. So thinking about Delicious Brains as a entrepreneur, business owner, product maker, what's the one thing that keeps you awake at night, apart from your 19-month-old child?
Yeah, good point. He's good now. There was a year there that was pretty rough. But, yeah, I'm an entrepreneur, so I have a lot of business ideas. Like my brain kind of doesn't stop working if I'm at all remotely thinking about business. So, I used to read like business books before bed, and that was a terrible idea because it was source of inspiration. And so your mind would just be sparking and you're trying to go to sleep, and it's just like terrible. So I stopped reading business stuff before bed. And now I read fiction just to get myself completely out of this world into another one.
Yeah.
It seems to be doing the trick. So it's a good tip. If anyone has trouble sleeping that's an entrepreneur, you might want to try that.
It's funny you mentioned that, man. I'm having this exact conversation with my fiance at the moment. She's like banning me from reading business books before bed and keeps shoving fiction into my hand. I'm like, what's this? I don't want to read this. Give me some more Seth Godin or something to read,
Yeah. Well, I always thought fiction was such a waste of time, right? And then I started having sleeping problems that I was like, I'm gonna do something here, So
Yeah. Fiction's like it's like anesthetic, isn't it? It just puts you to sleep.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's crazy. I was skeptical too when I first started doing it, but it works.
What kind of fiction do you read? Do you read like really trashy fiction, like just mind-numbing stuff, or is it highbrow?
I don't know. I don't know where it falls. It's pretty geeky stuff.
Right. Okay.
It's what the heck's it called? Peter F. Hamilton is the author.
Okay.
And it's like sci-fi stuff set in the future.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah, Judas Unchained is the book I'm reading right now. It's the second one in the Commonwealth saga. It sounds dorky just to even say that. But it's actually quite good. I enjoy sci-fi stuff. Like I like Star Wars and Star Trek and all that stuff. So
you like Star Wars and Star Trek? I didn't think anyone could like both. I thought you were one or the other. I thought if you were a Trekkie, you weren't a Lucas fan, but you like both. Yeah.
They're supposed to be like mortal enemies, aren't they? Like the Star Trek versus Star Wars, but no, I don't discriminate, man. I like them all.
Right, fair enough. I'm a Star Wars fan. I grew up watching Star Wars, and I've never watched Trek, and I just can't. I tried watch a couple of episodes, and it's just a bit weird. It's just I don't know. I can't. I'm like, nah, come on. Where are the stormtroopers?
Yeah, I could see that. If you're expecting something similar, it's not similar at all. Very different.
Yeah.
But like there is certain Star Trek that I don't care for, like the old Star Trek. I've never gotten into that, like the William Shatner stuff. Never got into that. Couldn't do it. But like Voyager, that one I thought was cool because it was like they're trapped far away and they had to get home. It was like a typical storyline, and they faced all kinds of adversity.
Not predictable at all. What do you do when you're not working? Well, I think you just answered that question. You're obviously at Trek conventions, aren't you?
Oh, God. I don't think I'll ever go to one of those, but I won't rule it out. When I'm not working, I don't know. I'm just spending time with my wife and son, and I do spend some time playing sports, like ultimate frisbee in the summer. I play.
Cool.
Like I go down to Boston and across Canada playing frisbee, and then in the winter I play hockey. So I played hockey since I was 5 years old.
Ice hockey?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like really hardcore, violent sport, isn't it? Ice hockey?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I play in a beer league kind of now.
Right, right.
When I was growing up, it was pretty violent. There was a lot of hitting. I got injured once. I was out for 6 months. I had to go to physio.
Oh my
All this
God.
stuff. So yeah, it's like, it's pretty rough. But I mean, footy's pretty rough too. In Australia, there,
Yeah.
that's a great sport.
Yeah, that is. Now, am I right in saying that you lived in Australia at one point?
I did. I lived
Right.
in Melbourne for a year. Yeah.
That's right. We spoke about this at Pressnomics. That's right. Whereabouts
Yeah.
were you living again? Whereabouts in Melbourne?
In Collingwood on Smith Street. Or
yeah.
just off. Yeah.
Right,
Really
right.
close to the Site Point offices, actually. I did
Yes, that's right.
did a little bit of work for them, actually.
That's right.
I did the redesign of Flippa, or the design for Flippa,
Right.
the auction site for
Yeah.
websites. So
Yeah.
if you want to sell a website, you could list it there, and it would go up for auction. And everyone hated it. I don't mean the client. The client loved it and had a lot of hand in how it was designed. But then when they launched it, their community was like that. They didn't like it at all. It was
Wow.
hilarious.
What
So
year
they
was
ended up changing it quite a bit.
what
so.
year was that?
But what year?
Yeah.
2008.
Okay, so
or
we can
9.
look it up on the Wayback Machine, yeah?
You can see screenshots of it on in my portfolio, actually,
Sweet.
on bradt.ca.
I'm going to link to that in the show notes. That's cool.
Yeah, you can see the before and after. It's quite different. It was a fun project, though.
Yeah. Okay, so all right, so let's talk about WordPress. Let's talk about the WP App Store. For those of you that don't know, for a period of time there was a WP App Store, which Brad was the brains behind, which basically was a plugin that you installed in WordPress, and it allowed you to buy premium themes and plugins via the App Store, right? So, a couple of questions. How did the idea for that come about? What was the impetus for building that?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple, really, and it wasn't really an original idea. It was just, apply the iTunes model to WordPress, right? Like, put the purchases right inside the WordPress dashboard, just like the purchasers are right inside iTunes. So that's kind of how it came about. But I just went ahead with executing it.
Right.
I had a little conversation with Brian Castle one day, just over Google Talk, and he mentioned that Adii from WooThemes,
Yep.
his website has like a page that invites people to submit ideas for him to give advice about, and so I just did that kind of on a whim, and then ended up having a few back and forths with him, and then he came on board as an advisor, and that's kind of how the ball got rolling. And after that, I built a prototype, and they really liked it, and then it kind of went from there. Yeah.
And at some point, am I right in saying at some point Carl Hancock from Gravity Forms came on as an advisor as well, or an investor?
Yep.
Is that right? So
Yeah. They both actually invested into it as well. Yeah.
and so what was
And they're both
Obvious-
still investors in Delicious Brains, actually.
in Delicious Brains? So obviously their motivation was being makers of premium themes and premium plugins. They thought this is obviously a good distribution channel, but larger than that might actually become a platform for WordPress users to buy premium themes and plugins.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they saw a lot of potential in the idea, and they really liked the prototype I had built. They thought that I was executing at that point really well, and so that's what gave them the confidence to invest. I think. I mean, you'd have to ask them for sure. For that. But that's what it looked like from my perspective.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So tell me what happened. Because I got an email. I mean, I knew this was happening anyway, but I got an email from you a few weeks back saying you've officially shut down WP App Store. It no longer exists. There were tears and a funeral and a wake, and
We
what
flushed
happened?
it down the toilet with the hamster.
Control Z, just to archive it. So what happened? Yeah. Why do you think it didn't stick?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons, as with pretty much any business failure. But I think the big reason is that the plugin was too much of a barrier for people. They had to install a plugin to browse the products, and they just couldn't see past that. Like, why would I do that? So like they couldn't see like that it was solving a major problem that they had. And in the end, I don't think it really was solving a major problem, because even if they did install a plugin, it was slightly easier to buy things and browse products from different vendors. But they also weren't getting the full picture. They weren't seeing all the products that are available for WordPress like they would if they searched Google, for instance, right? So this is like a mini marketplace, whereas Google is kind of the WordPress marketplace, like the whole WordPress marketplace. And the other big thing was that there's just not that many quality WordPress plugins at the moment. It's really early days for plugins right now. And so the theme market's quite well established, but I only had less than a dozen plugins in the marketplace, right? Which is not much of a browsing experience, right?
Right.
It's like one page.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably a part of it as well. So timing, I guess, is what it came down to with that. This idea could certainly still work in the future, and I have no doubt someone will, build a marketplace into the dashboard that will be successful. I'm sure of it. But check out that blog post I wrote. I go into detail about why I think things didn't work out this time around. So,
do you think there should be? I'm not asking you if you think there ever will be, but do you think there should be an official WP app store that ships with WordPress?
That is I would have said probably yes before, and now I'm not so sure. And the reason why I've changed that opinion is because now I'm selling a plugin, and so and my livelihood depends on it, right? And so if that happened, that would be a huge disruption to the current commercial WordPress ecosystem, and it's uncertain how it would affect it. So it's I'm not sure if it would be a good thing or not. I mean, maybe it would be an amazing thing. Maybe I would sell more products through it, or maybe not. I don't know. And so, I don't think, it would be a huge benefit for most of the vendors at the moment to have something that's integrated. Because you have to also think about who's managing that, how much of a cut are they taking, all those sorts of things, and what are the benefits? What are the actual benefits that we would get out of it? Because right now we have a pretty good system. We put the freemium version of our products up. We give away code for free that people can look at, learn from, and everything. And then people can upgrade to a pro version of it. That's as old. That business model is as old as the web.
That's right,
people have been giving away software and selling upgrades since 1998 at least.
Yeah.
That's when I was poking around the CGIresources.com website that back in the day.
It's interesting to hear your take on that from a vendor's point of view. That's a position I hadn't thought. I mean, because as a plugin developer, I see it as distribution, but it's I mean, I don't think it's ever going to happen anyway, or I don't think there's ever going to be an official WP app store. Someone else might swing the bat at doing something like what you did. But it's interesting to hear you say that it could actually disrupt the model that we've got at the moment, which is a direct relationship with our customers.
Yeah. Well, one thing I would say is that, like, it really depends on who your customers are as well, right? Like, for me, my customers are other developers, other people that work with WordPress.
Yep.
Whereas if you're selling a theme, you might be selling to someone who has barely any experience building a website, someone that's doing it themselves, kind of thing, that's set up a site on GoDaddy and bought a theme, use the one-click installer. And, the Mojo guys, the Mojo Marketplace guys, are integrating with tons of web hosts now because they got purchased by Endurance Group, which is the company that owns HostGator and a bunch of other web hosts. And so now, if you go to one of those hosts and you do a one-click install of WordPress, the next step, it gives you an option to buy a theme, and it's a one-click, just like iTunes.
Yep.
Comes right off your hosting account.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's pretty cool. That was the vision, one of the strategies I was trying to go for with WP App Store. And so to see that happen right now, I think it's phenomenal. I wish it was me, but
yeah.
But those guys are great guys. I was talking to them a bit at Pressnomics, and they're just thrilled about the success they've had. So
yeah, it is a real success story. Do you think we risk commoditizing premium? I heard you speak about this on the Matt Report. Do you think it's hi Matt, by the way? Do you think we risk with that whole lowering the barrier to entry, install WordPress, one-click install to activate a theme, and one-click install to activate a bunch of plugins? Do you think that's then just going to drive the price right down to like an iPhone app, and everything is like premium themes and plugins are going to be sold for like a couple of bucks?
No. And here's why. The big difference between a WordPress theme and an App Store app or an App Store game, whatever, an iOS thing, is that iOS is a platform that's very locked down, right? Like another app can't really apps can't influence each other too much. With WordPress, everything can interact with one another and screw things up, right? So, like, for example, I mean, if you ever follow Carl Hancock on Twitter,
yeah,
you always hear him saying that like some theme is screwing up Gravity Forms, right? It's a very, very, that's like one of the biggest things they get for support, right? Yep. So that's not going to go away anytime soon unless somehow the WordPress themes get kind of locked down so that they can't do too much. And if that happens, then I could see it happening because then support costs go down and then you can actually drive the price down. But if themes can still be broken by any plugin that gets installed, you're still going to have support problems, right? Like, so
yeah,
I think that's the big difference. And so I don't see that happening anytime soon. Not to say that it won't happen, but
do you think from the consumer's point of view, they're used to pushing a button on a device and paying $2 or $3 to get some extra functionality? We're asking them to push a button on a device and pay an extra $50 or $100 to get some extra functionality. Do you think that's you're marketing to developers, as are we, but when you start talking to WordPress end users and asking them to buy plugins, do you think there's a barrier to, entry because the price point is different to an iOS app?
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not sure what consumers are thinking if they differentiate between something for the iOS platform versus something for a website, because I mean they could be comparing it to the cost of developing a site from scratch, right, which would be a lot more. So it's so tricky to try to guess what customer, because every customer is going to be looking at it from a different angle, right? Some are going to be comparing, and others are going to be thinking of the value that they're going to get out of this and how much time it's going to save them from doing it themselves or, whatever.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I've kind of just stopped guessing, and I think we just need to value things. Just look at the value that we're providing and price it that way, and stop comparing. Because, comparing might be bad anyway. Because maybe the guy that you're comparing to isn't sustainable. Maybe that business isn't sustainable, and they're going to go away next year.
I had this conversation recently about someone comparing something that someone was doing to a competitor, and it turns out that their competitor was actually losing money on this particular arm of their business, but they were doing it for completely philanthropic reasons, and they were making enough profit out of this arm of the business that this arm, they could fund it. And so I was saying, well, you can't compete with that on price. I mean, it's impossible because they're losing money on this. So
yeah, that's like the Walmart model, right?
Yeah.
Like they take a loss on music and put it in the back of the store, so that you walk through and you buy other things that they actually do make money on.
Yep. So, all right, talk about pricing. So WP Migrate DB was a free plugin for a long time. There's now a pro version with, added features and more sexiness because it's a pro version. But let's talk about pricing. Pricing is so arbitrary, right? Like in anything. Who says an iPad is worth, $700? I mean, we don't get to decide what the iPad is worth. Apple tell us what the iPad is worth. Pricing is so arbitrary. How do you, as a vendor and a product maker and an entrepreneur, how do you decide what price tag to put on your product?
Yeah. So when I priced Migrate DB Pro, I actually just looked at Gravity Forms. I made the huge mistake of just doing comparison pricing, because that's how I usually would shop as a consumer, right? I wasn't thinking of how much value I was providing, or how, because that's really difficult to put a price on that as well, because you're not really sure how much value people are going to get out of it, right? So that's what I did. I just I knew Gravity Forms model was working really well for them, so I went with that. I even copied the way that they laid out their pricing and that kind of thing. Which turns out I made a lot. That was a good idea, because they read the research on that stuff, and they worked out all that stuff. Because I've been reading some articles of pricing lately, and I just kind of stumbled across that, so it was good. But I'm actually in the process of reevaluating the pricing, and I've added a lot more value to the product. And so I feel like now is a good time to say, okay, we've added a ton of value since we launched. We haven't changed the price since we launched. And so here's the new pricing, right? So I'm nervous about it. I'm not going to lie. I mean, anytime you increase your pricing, you're going to have hate, right?
Yeah.
People are going to be hating it, right? Yeah. At the same time, two things kind of reassure me with this. One, a bunch of people have already told me they would gladly pay more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And two, I don't mind if I lose half my customers. Because if I lose half my customers and I double my price, then I'm still further ahead, right?
Yeah. Because you got less support, right?
Exactly. There's less people to support. Yeah. I don't like that, because then less people are using the product and less people are benefiting from it.
Yeah.
But it gives me the confidence to do it, Yeah. Like that's like the worst case scenario. Half of them just pack it in. Yeah. So I think that's how you have to look at it.
Yeah.
At least it's working for me.
Yeah. I'd be very surprised if half your customers left if you put the prices up.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd be very surprised if half the customers even noticed that you put the price up,
Yeah. Another strategy I'm using is that the people that already purchased are going to get this all the stuff that we're adding, they're going to get. So they'll only have to, like, the renewal price will only increase for them, right? They're not gonna have to pay any extra to get the new stuff.
Yeah.
So that should ease the shock, I guess.
Yeah. And how do you? This is completely off topic, but how do you manage that technically? Is it through WooCommerce or is it through EDD or how do you actually issue the licensing and the renewal and all that stuff?
Yeah, it's WooCommerce, and we're using a bunch of add-ons for WooCommerce. The subscriptions add-on, the software add-on, and then we built our own plugin to tie that together. Our own plugin does the API part. So like when the plugin connects to WooCommerce to see if there's an update or activate a license and any of that stuff, that's all custom stuff that we built.
Gotcha.
Because we wanted to do it a little different than the add-ons do it out of the box. So, yeah.
Do you know Brent from the author of Subscriptions?
I do.
Yeah.
Well, I'm chatting. He added me to the Git repo, their Git repo, and so I've just chatted with him a little bit about features and stuff. But yeah.
Sweet. He's a good guy. Hey, Brent. I was in San Francisco a few weeks ago, and we're hanging out before Pressnomics, and he hosted a poker night at his place. And
cool. Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty incredible add-on. He just made a huge update to it. The 1.4 version does upgrades now, and it's very complicated.
I think it does suspension as well. I think you can suspend a subscription and then come back and reactivate it.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
It's very good.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the biggest pain in the ass about selling a premium WordPress plugin?
After all that, I was just going to say setting up the platform to sell it.
That's kind of why I asked you that question, man. You know, I'm just here for the free consulting, man. It's in disguise of an interview, but I just want free advice, you know.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like WP App Store kind of like one of the reasons I started, because I was like, I could build a plugin, but I was like, I'd have to set up a site to sell it and do all this marketing. I wish there was a place they could just throw it up on. That wouldn't take 70% of my earnings.
Yeah.
Right? That's what it was at the time anyway. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. It's just like having to set up the website. Like you have to put a theme up or design the site yourself, and then do a bunch of marketing. And so that takes away from the product, right? Like your original idea is to build this product, but then you have all this other things that you have to do as well, right?
Yeah.
So it takes away your attention from the product. So, I mean, that's one of the biggest benefits of building an iOS app or game, is that you can just focus on that, because Apple handles the rest of the stuff for you, right? And so, if that would be one big advantage to having that kind of thing for WordPress, right? I think that would probably increase the quality of products and stuff. So,
and what about like leveraging Code Canyon initially to get traction?
Yeah, that could work. I've never tried it, and I think Code Canyon has come a long way in the last year or two. Since last Pressnomics, basically, they've been doing a lot of good things. They're doing more code evaluations. There's stricter guidelines about what gets in and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, they're definitely getting better. So, but I don't know. I think the tools are getting better, anyways. Like you have, easy digital downloads or WooCommerce. iThemes just released the e-commerce platform based on WordPress as well.
Yep.
I mean, you could throw it up just a PayPal buy now button if you just wanted to test the waters. You could do it really simple to start without getting carried away.
Like the minimum viable product version of events.
Exactly. Yeah. I did it a little differently. The validation, like the product validation, because I had that free plugin, right? So I added a little tiny survey form to the sidebar of that plugin and asked people if they'd be willing to pay for a pro version, and then I asked them how much and that kind of stuff. So I got 300 submissions from people that were using the free plugin saying that they'd be willing to buy a pro version with those features. So I think the average price people put in was like $30 or something, but that's probably half of what people are actually willing to pay.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So I think that was a good way to figure it out. So, stick a free the hard thing is to get traction to your free plugin though.
Yeah.
Because you kind of have to promote your free plugin because I had that on there for like how many years? 4 years. And it just organically grew an audience, but you don't want to have to wait 4 years before you can start selling stuff.
That's right. So. Yeah. Well, Yoast waited 8. I remember when I interviewed Yoast, he said he'd been building an audience for 8 years, just doing consulting work, and then decided to productize and monetize his audience after 8 years of building it. You know, that's a pretty strong platform to start on. Yeah.
I think he probably could have started way earlier if he wanted to, right? Like WordPress SEO has been like a huge plugin for years, right? Like, so yeah, he probably just got around to it 8 years later. But yeah, I mean, he probably started somewhere, right? Like, so maybe it took him like 5 years to develop an audience that would have been worth selling to or something. So and maybe it does just take time. I don't know.
But I like your idea of putting a survey in the back or something in the back of a plugin to start collecting people's details and their feedback and start asking them, have a conversation about what it is they want. The sooner you can start collecting that information, the better. Let's talk about support for a second. How do you actually handle support tickets? Do you have like a support help desk? Because I imagine your support is insane.
No, it's not bad. Not at all. I mean, like, when you asked me what the biggest pain in the ass was, I don't know. I imagine a lot of people would think I was going to say support, right? Support's ridiculous. But it's not. I think that's one of the reasons people don't start a business, because they're afraid of support. But support is how you refine your product. It's the support that people are telling you what's wrong. I mean, when we launched and we started getting feedback on the product, like our morale boost went way up because we'd been working in isolation, like myself and Chris. And then all of a sudden, all these people have all this feedback for us, and we're no longer just making assumptions about what should be. They're telling us what needs to be, right? And so, support is underrated. It's an awesome tool to making your product better. And I mean, we just use Gmail and we just interact with customers, kind of just like I'd send you an email and ask you a question.
Really?
Kind of
so no fancy help desk software or like automated macros and rules to send support tickets off to the right people. None of that stuff. Just good old fashioned Gmail.
Well, there's only 2 of us, so we're getting away with using Gmail right now. But I could imagine, if we had, a couple other people, forget about it, would be unmanageable. I was looking at moving to Help Scout, and there's no way to like import all of our existing email, so we'd have to be bouncing back and forth between Gmail, and so I'm gonna wait. We're just gonna wait until they have an import. I was just like, give me an API endpoint I could send a raw email to and just process it for me, please. But they're just not there yet. So I'm sure they'll get there real soon. But
so Chris, Chris, who is a developer, right? He's an employee and developer, and he works he's based in Sydney.
Yeah, he's employed full time. I originally hired him for WP App Store, and then shortly thereafter shelved that project and had him start hacking away at the Migrate DB Pro plugin. So yeah, he's been with me since October last year. So
cool.
It's just about like the 1 year anniversary right now.
And how do you manage the time zone thing? Like, how do you guys communicate?
Oh, that was a serious challenge in the beginning because there's so much communication that needs to happen in the beginning to get on the same page and for him to learn the systems. And there's, you have to do a lot of one-on-one time, like real time, like not send an email and then he'll get it when he wakes up in the morning.
Yeah.
Because it's literally 13 hours ahead, right? Well, you're there.
Yeah.
Well, you'd be 12 hours probably, right? Melbourne, but he's in Sydney, so it's literally all I do is add 1 to my clock and then change the AM PM.
Yeah.
So it's 10 p.m. here now. It's 11 a.m. his time right now. So it became very difficult. What I ended up doing is having to spend like 3 hours between like 8 p.m. and 11 p.m. With him in the beginning, and it was difficult. If I was to do it again, I probably wouldn't hire someone that far away in a different time zone when it's employee number 1. But now it's fine because we just communicate through email. We use Flow. We use GitHub tons. We mostly use GitHub.
Yep.
Like GitHub issues and just using all the other tools. So right now it's been great. But yeah, it was really challenging in the beginning.
Yeah, I'll bet. All right, let's talk about freelancing for a minute. For those of you that don't know, WP Elevation is a business accelerator program that helps WordPress freelancers build a business. So we're just going to do a quick round here. I'm going to ask you some quick questions about freelancing, and you're just going to give me some quick answers off the top of your head. Sound good?
Sure.
Cool. What's the number one thing any freelancer or consultant needs to know?
It's easy. It's easier than you think.
Nice.
That's a bad answer. I'd say. Like, now, I take it back. That's a bad answer. Don't just jump into it. I had a very unique situation, so don't do that. I was working at an agency, right? So I had this great portfolio when I came out, and so it was easy for me because clients just came to me through my website, and I had all these contacts at the agency and stuff.
So develop a portfolio is the takeaway there. You got to have a portfolio, right?
Yeah, I'd say that's probably the number one thing.
Right.
You need the portfolio. You need something to attract people to your website.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice.
And give them confidence,
What's the best thing you've ever done to find new customers? Go work for an agency and then just take all theirs.
Yeah. I think. Well, if I'm talking about, are we talking strictly about freelancing here?
Yeah. So if you're wind the clock back to when you were freelance designing and developing for WordPress websites. What's the best thing you ever did to get new clients?
Yeah, I think I probably posted on like Freelance Switch. I think that job board was probably pretty good. Or I literally went there and found projects. Other job boards. There's jobs.wordpress.net is another one you can go to.
That's a good one.
But to be honest, most of my customers came to me, so I kind of lucked out there. I mean, like I said, I was working at an agency, so most of my work came from them after I left. So.
Yep. How do you stop competing on price?
You have to educate your customers on value and that you're providing more than just hours of your time. You're providing your expertise and strategy. You're providing things that they don't know, right? So I think that's what separates you from the people that are just trying to undercut, sell at the bottom, lowest price,
Yep. Any tips on writing better proposals?
I never wrote proposals. I thought they were waste of time. I did wrote a couple and never heard back, and I was just done with it. And I've also heard stories about like, so the government puts out RFPs, requests for proposals, and I've heard that most of those are already decided before the RFP even goes out. And so I was just like, forget this. I'm not wasting my time on this garbage. So word of mouth is the way I go.
Brilliant. I love it. Did you have a tool or a system for your CRM for managing client relationships? Gmail?
Yeah. I'm pretty good at Gmail, man.
Awesome.
I got labels and all kinds of crazy stuff. I got tons of filters. And, it's great. Inbox Zero, I follow that.
Awesome.
GTD, getting things done.
Yeah.
All that stuff.
Inbox Zero is
yeah,
good, isn't
Gmail is awesome, man. I love it.
Yeah.
I also use FreshBooks, so it's pretty good for managing like invoices and that stuff.
Great. Okay, what's the best way to keep a project and a client on track? In other words, what's the best way to stop the whole thing derailing halfway through?
I'd say you have to manage expectations. So under promise, over deliver. So, just say you're going to, you have to, if you're going to give a time when you're going to be done, you better make sure that that's realistic. That, in the beginning, you might be bad at doing that, but you should quickly realize that whenever you have a date in mind, you should double it or something,
Yeah.
And if the client's pushing you to deliver sooner, you better be ready to work like evenings and weekends, because that's what you're going to end up doing, and you better charge more. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
I double time for evenings and weekends, man. You shouldn't be working regular rate at those times of day. It's not healthy, in my opinion.
Awesome. I like it. I like it a lot. How do you get referrals from your existing clients?
I mean, if you do a good job, they're just going to, refer you. That's just how it's going to work. Like, I mean, if you're, a good communicator is the biggest thing I've heard, like, from clients. Like, I just want a developer that will answer my emails. That's what people want. Like, there's a shortage of developers who have good communication skills. And so if you can be a developer who does have good ones, like, you're going to have no shortage of work, I can assure you.
That is the pull quote for this interview, I think.
Yeah.
Brad T says there's a shortage of developers who have good communication skills.
There's a shortage of developers, period.
Yeah, that's right.
And then add to that those who have good communication skills.
I think you've probably already answered this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What's the number one thing you can do to differentiate yourself?
Yeah, I mean, that's the communication thing, I think. And then also just do great work. Like, when you do your work, be meticulous. Don't do things haphazardly. Pay attention, like, bring like an attention to detail. The client will recognize that. Like, good clients will anyway. I mean, that's how you step up from bad clients to good clients, right? When you get a good client, they're going to refer you because you did great work to other good clients.
Yep.
So if you want to get, up your game, I think that's how you do it.
That's awesome. All right, let's talk about the future of Delicious Brains. What does the future for Delicious Brains hold? Are you guys going to end up being like a plug-in shop, or where are you? Are you going to move into the iOS market? What's going on?
I don't think we'll be doing any iOS, but for now we're just gonna keep making the product better. And I am actively looking at other possibilities, like other product possibilities, but it feels really early on because I can't really put my finger on anything that I want to go into just yet. So I'm kind of at this point, I can tell you where I am right now. I'm thinking of staying near the database stuff. So maybe doing something else with databases around WordPress. So that's kind of where my head is right now, but that could change in a few days' time.
Yeah. What's the future of WordPress look like to you?
I mean, it's awesome. Like, it's not slowing down. I've seen some really great commercial plugins pop up this year, and I'm super excited by that. I mean, I love that Matt's talk at WordCamp San Francisco was about how WordPress is like a platform for building web apps and that kind of thing. I really like that concept, and like how we can get rid of these privacy concerns around like Facebook and Twitter and stuff by like building things on WordPress instead, and everyone owning their own information. And because when you post a picture to one of those other services, you basically get nothing, right? If you post a picture to your own blog, you're getting something. You're bringing attention to you and your brand and your website. So I think that's I think the big thing that WordPress could potentially solve in the future, I think, is that kind of data freedom, that whole thing.
So do you think like a proliferation of like something like what Tom and Noel have done at Happy Tables? Do you see like a whole range of sort of web apps for different verticals, whether it's, social networking, or whether it's restaurants, or whether it's real estate, built on WordPress?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you bring up Happy Tables and that whole idea of like a SaaS built on top of WordPress. I find that less interesting to me personally, because I don't see, just because it's built on WordPress, I don't see how that matters all that much, right? Because it's a SaaS, right? Who cares what the underlying technology is, right? It's a service, right? Provided, and so you don't own your data really. I mean, and so I think WordPress is less relevant for those types of products. If you look at a service like Restaurant Engine, it's like a competitor to Happy Tables. Mm-hmm. They're taking a bit of a different approach, where they're targeting designers. So they're actually building a platform people can build on top of. But again, in that situation, WordPress isn't terribly relevant in that situation either. Maybe you could suck out that data and like set up your own site, but then you wouldn't be able to take the themes with you, and then the plugins are probably proprietary as well. So yeah, that whole SaaS thing I feel is less relevant to WordPress for those reasons. So
interesting. Yeah. And what are you going to be doing in 3 years from now? Do you think you'll still be in the software entrepreneurial space?
Oh, I hope so. I hope I have more employees. I hope to hire more people and build a team and build more products is the plan. Because I really enjoy what we're doing right now, and I enjoy the feedback we get from customers, and like the problems we're solving is alleviating pain, and it's an awesome feeling to be doing. I mean, at Pressnomics, I got a hug and like pats on the back, and like that's awesome. Like my product's making people like less stressed during the day.
Yeah.
It's like maybe I should be in the pharmaceutical industry.
I saw a presentation recently about the difference between selling vitamin tablets and headache tablets, and this guy was saying, it's James Tuckerman from Anthill Australia. It's a big online entrepreneurial magazine. You might know Anthill from your days in Australia. He was saying most of us sell vitamin tablets, and we need to reposition our products as headache tablets, because you never rush into a chemist to buy vitamins, but you rush into a chemist to buy headache tablets. And WP Migrate DB Pro for me is a headache tablet. It's not a vitamin. It's not something that's a nice to have. It actually solves a major headache.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that's what I should do. I'll put a big vitamin on my website. It's like
a big bandage. Like
headache. Headache relief.
Headache relief. Hey, just before we wrap up, a little bit of information on this competition. As I said before, Brad is going to give away a personal license of WP Migrate DB Pro. In order to win a copy, leave a comment underneath the video and tell us the one feature that you would like to see in a future release of WP Migrate DB Pro. So that way Brad can get some feedback on what to do with the product, and I'll get Brad to swing by in a week or so and award the winner. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Awesome.
I'll just add a little something to that so that we don't get ideas that are already coming. We're already adding media files, so we'll be able to suck down your media files.
Beautiful.
And so that's coming. I'm actually testing it right now. And then WP CLI add-on as well. So people that use the command line with WordPress, that's coming as well. All right. Other ideas, more ideas.
Apart from command line integration and media library, what else do you want to see in a future edition of WP Migrate DB Pro, given the fact that it is designed to migrate your database from one installation to another? So, the ability to cut a PSD into valid HTML and CSS probably isn't going to happen. So keep your ideas relevant. All right. Hey, what's the number one piece of advice you would give any entrepreneur trying to build their own business?
I think maybe you got to really spend a lot of time analyzing the problem. I mean, that's what I'm doing right now. Basically, I'm trying to think of a new business, essentially, right? Because I'm thinking of a new product, which is almost a whole new business, right? So you really have to analyze it, make sure it's an actual problem that people have, that it's a pain. It's the more painful it is a problem, like the easier it is going to be for you, right? Like, if people are, if it's alleviating headaches, it's going to be easy to sell, right? People don't want headaches.
Yeah.
So
nice. Where can people reach out to you and say thanks, Brad? Bradt.ca
is my website, and @BradT on Twitter.
Awesome. I'll stick those links in the show notes. And finally, who would you like me to try and interview and why?
Try Jason Schuller. He started Press 75 way back in, 1952, I think it was. He's been around for a long time in the WordPress biz, like selling themes, and he's exploring new avenues now, like different things. And so it's really interesting, his take on things right now, and it's interesting what he's working on.
Is he
he's actually working on a new blogging platform.
Is it Leaflets? Yeah. Is that it? Is that?
No, that's a CMS that Jason, myself, and the guys from Organic Themes have collaborated on.
Ah, right.
And Droplets is the other thing, the blogging platform.
So Jason's working on Droplets, and you guys are all collaborating on Leaflets, yeah?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. When are we going to see? When are those things going to see the light of day?
Droplets is already out, and so is Leaflets. Actually, we just haven't really marketed it yet. We've kind of, what do you call that? Like a ghost launch or a soft launch?
Yeah.
We just kind of slid it out under the radar, and it's up there and it's working, and people are poking at it and stuff, and
cool,
getting some feedback on it. But we haven't like blasted it out to an email list or anything.
Yeah. Sweet. So leave some links under the show notes so people can check it out. That's awesome. And Jason Schuller, I'm coming to get you, courtesy of Brad T. I'm going to hook you up for an interview, and I'll send Brad a link when that's done. Hey, Brad T, thank you very much for spending some time with us on the WP Elevation podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time out, and wish you all the best for the future of Delicious Brains and WP Migrate DB Pro.
Yeah, thanks, Troy. It's been a pleasure, and I wish you all the best as well.
Cheers. Thanks, man.